All right, welcome back. It's a emergency stream tonight. A little bit of a surprise getting So Rare's sneak peek for us. Predictably, the response was less than positive. Um, but I wanted to go over what So Rare released today for the upcoming MLB season. Hopefully hopefully you guys can hear me. I haven't streamed for a while, so getting everything set up is kind of a fingers crossed situation. But welcome back. Hopefully, at least for the baseball season, everyone's as excited as I am, based on Discord responses to the information that was released today. I'm guessing folks are not as excited about the upcoming So Rare MLB season. Oh my goodness, Bob is going to join us. All right, let me bring Bob in. Bob, welcome.
Hey, what's going on, Kev? How's it going?
How are you? I was going to say, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to hear Bob or not, but audio is working. I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, just kind of hanging in there, ready
Yeah.
to dive into this. I haven't paid much attention, so
Yeah.
what's up?
So yeah, now Bob and I over the off season had talked about plans for what we're going to talk about, and I know he'd wanted to talk about NBA, his experience with that this season, but instead we're going to be talking about what in the gosh heck golly So Rare has done to this game that we love, and as usual. Bob and I have very, very different takes on it, so I think this should be a good talk. But quickly, I just kind of wanted to run through exactly what So Rare released today. For some of the folks that follow along in the So Rare FP Discord, or the folks that are in Ace's Discord and whatnot, Damien, probably a month ago, gave us a little bit of a preview of this. It was all, kind of with the caveat of, we're figuring it out and this is all tentative, but they wanted to, I think, get kind of managers' takes on it. And a lot of what he shared is what is here. As with kind of then, I think the general response was not great. It was, oh my God, they killed Classic. For me, I have a slightly different take, but let's take a look at what's going to happen this year, assuming they don't change anything. And Sora has been known to take back what they've done. But we've got a schedule. So March 17th, Marketplace is going to open right before the season opens. So it doesn't look like we're probably going to get the early access type cards that they did with NBA and soccer. As everyone kind of assumed, there's going to be daily gameplay. Something that's a little bit surprising, I think, when it came out both for soccer and here, is that they're bringing back a beat the game type competition. It's not. I'm not clear yet on what that's going to look like. I'm not sure if Bob might be able to talk about what it looks like in soccer for the things that they've added. But the big ones are here: the in-season requirements and multi-entry and energy. And so, kind of looking at the NBA season and what they did, I think it's going to look a lot like that. And I think we assumed the MLB season was going to look a lot like that, in that there was, a set of classic competitions and a set of in-season competitions. And the classic competitions, the rewards were cards, and the in-season competition, the rewards were strictly cash. And it looks like they are going away from that entirely, and just having, for the most part at least, in-season competitions. And so multiple entries into those competitions, but I'm guessing it's going to look a lot like the setup that we had previously with All-Star and Pro, and then multiple entries. So pretty much what you can do in NBA, but instead of having, some are only for Classic, some are only for in-season. And I think part of the response to this is so negative because it's only going to be in-season competitions. But the caveat to that is that, as they say, Classic cards will still have a vital role to play. But so, what they're introducing is energy, which is, essentially a way to power up your classic cards from prior seasons and use them as if they were in-season cards. And so, the things that they have made clear are that if you want to, you can run an entire lineup of classic cards if you have the energy to boost them. What we don't know is how's that going to work? How do you earn energy? Like what's it going to take to do that? So there's just some vague details about that, but basically, it's something where there's a cooldown for your classic cards. So, an in-season one you can use every week without any restrictions. But, for a 22 or a 23 or a 24 card, you're going to need to use energy to play it in those same competitions. And it will temporarily work as if it was an in-season card. I'm not big into soccer, but this sounds an awful lot to me like the training or fitness kind of element that they talked about introducing probably again, Bob can probably help with this, probably 2 years back, a year and a half ago or so, which they ultimately scrapped because no one liked it. But that's the biggest thing. There's ceiling and vaults and things like that we can talk about a little bit, but this is the big thing that we want to talk about. And I'm going to stop monologuing here and let Bob Bob take the wheel and let us know what your thoughts are, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously wasn't on any of the calls before, or else I probably would have given feedback there, which is probably why I wasn't on the calls. But yeah, this is interesting to say the least. And part of my concern is that we just spent a lot of money building our classic collections, and now they feel useless. Now, I say that with the big caveat of we have no idea what the details of this will look like at all, and how long it will take to build up the energy to be able to use them. Like, do I need to grind NBA, MLB dailies for 2 months before I can actually use a classic team like completely in an in-season competition? And you can only do it once or twice a year. Like, what is this going to actually look like? Because to me, it feels like they're trying to gamify a fantasy sports game. And I'm not a big fan of turning a fantasy sports game into essentially a really poor MMO because it's all about the grind. Like just grind and build energy, and then maybe you can use them for one time, and it doesn't work out, and then good luck. Hope you had a good season. And to me, that's a very interesting approach, and it makes me very concerned as to who will be willing to continue to buy year after year after year. Because it's one thing to be doing it at limited, which I did last year, but it's another thing to be doing it at rare, and then super rare, and then unique. Like, why would you keep coming back? Like, that is what the main question is. And something that you and I talked about before, Kev, is are they going to triple the amount of in-season rewards and cash that would come through? Because then I would actually start to consider doing more. I would consider it in even more ways. But they keep the amount of money that you can win in in-season comps the same. I'm really concerned that a lot of people that spent a lot of money last year will simply just not spend, and this might not be really good. And if this is where Sewer is going, I really wonder what's happening. So, that's first look. When it comes to training and stuff like that, it was scrapped because no one liked it. Again, it is the whole point of a fantasy game that you're paying money to get into to actually play the game, not to actually compete in the actual MLB aspects of it, not to play the video game version of, grinding energy or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's baseball. You might as well call it steroids if you want to actually boost up my players. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how it looks. I want to see what the prize pools actually look like, how much is going to come through, how quickly we can actually gain energy. Can I do multiple, daily entries? Because I've got hundreds of cards. What good is it if I can do daily entries with classic cards, but I can only do one? Like, who cares? It's a complete waste of time and effort in that instance. Can I do 100 lineups, then it might have more value, right? I might be able to actually exponentially increase my energy to use my cards more often throughout the course of the season. So I'm curious what the balance is going to look like, because if you make, energy too good, no one needs to buy in season cards. If you make it too poor, then everyone will have to buy in season cards, and then no one's willing to actually pay to buy them. Like, there's where is it going to go? Like, how do you find a balance? And I've just had enough experience with So Rare to understand that balance has never been things that they were really prone to doing well. So, you know, we shall see. So I'm waiting for more information to come out. I want to take a look at it. Like you and I talked about before, Kev, for all of the classic cards, a lot of people are going to feel like they are nerfed because, quite honestly, it certainly feels like they are without seeing what's going forward. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if you want to give us something, let's make the postseason cards that we worked hard to win over the chases at the end of the year. Maybe we make those have in season utility for the next year. And maybe it's just the next year that you go through. So, if you came in first or second, you won like a Judge or a Shohei last year in the postseason competition. Why can't we use that as an in-season card this year? Like, help us get off on a good foot. But that would be at least saying, hey, it's not worthless to go through here. You don't have to do more. It's just something. Give us something, because right now it feels like I'm being spanked and put in the corner with my dunce cap for spending a lot of money because I don't know the details of what it's going to actually look like.
Yeah, I hear you. I do think that idea is phenomenal. It's the playoff rewards have at times seemed like a letdown because it was a special card, but like you really don't get to like use it at all in the in season. And that is something that there's not a lot of, right? If they're gonna end up introducing, this card is always going to be treated as an in season one. You want to keep that pretty limited, but no, I think that's a great idea, and hopefully that's something that they'll be open to and something that that they'll be looking at. But that is the sort of thing where it is gamifying it, and frankly, if this is going to grow, I think that's what they want it to be.
Yeah,
We've talked about
this
this,
is
but for me,
this is where I disagree, though, Kev. Like, this
yeah.
is like fundamentally where I
Oh, I know.
disagree. There's a gamer aspect, a video gamer, a Call of Duty gamer aspect that they're trying to introduce to a fantasy sports game. And those
Yes.
communities don't always cross at
Yeah.
all, right?
For me, as much as video games, and there are certainly elements of that, it's also collectible card games, which is kind of what this is, right?
Kind of. I mean,
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
trying to. I mean,
almost entirely. It's collectibles, they're cards, and it's a game. But instead of Pokemon battling or casting magic spells, we're doing baseball stuff.
yeah, but do your
And
Pokemon
we're
cards
looking
lose
to,
their value like after the next year?
for sure. Yeah,
They do.
absolutely.
Okay, I know nothing about Pokemon.
And that's the thing, is that
Yeah.
Magic and Pokemon, and I don't know Pokemon as well,
Mhm.
certainly, but I do. I mean, I played Pokemon Go for a while, and so a lot of the mechanics look like stuff like that. But like I said, like cooldowns and needing to um, you need to grind for certain things, and having options of like you can pay to boost your guy, or you can do the grind and earn enough XP or gems or whatever
Mhm.
to be able to do what you need to do. But Magic, I know for sure they have seasons, and they have there's some tournaments that allow all but certain cards that have been excluded, and some that require you to only use the most recent however many releases or things like that. So I mean, and I think that is the model, and that's the big thing for me, is that I think if this is going to grow and be as successful as I think a lot of us kind of got into it because we thought it could be, I think that's going to be a large part of it, is attracting a variety of different people that want to play a bunch of different ways. And I mean, that's always been something that I've really liked about the Solar MLB game, is that you can play it a bunch of different ways. And I was just joking before, like I was very much looking forward to Bob and I having much different methods of playing this season. Where when we last spoke, at the end of the last season, the conversation was for Bob, am I going to just sell all these the in-season collections I have and start over fresh and just do the same thing next year, which was, just buying in-season cards, playing them all year long, overpaying up front, but being able to play in a year's worth of contests and do well, or, should he keep those and then add on to it? Whereas, I've thought a lot about this since Damien shared, kind of their kind of vague ideas of what they were going to do. And to be clear, I wasn't someone that was invited to that either, at least not the initial kind of disclosure, but a few folks very early on, I think, signed NDAs, and they ran it by them. And there was a pretty negative response, I think. And then at least a couple of the folks that were part of that, asked for him to share it with a larger group. And so I was part of that second or third group that was there. But since then, my thought was, well, let's see if this works. I have a huge collection, but it's all going to be classic. And I'm still planning on doing this. I think I'm going to not, for the most part, not buy any in-season cards and see if it is playable. And I'll, if it works, it'll work. And if it doesn't, I'll be the first to be complaining about it. But I think for this to be a game that has legs, I think it is something where, I think it's unreasonable to think that we can't ever put money in again and have it be successful. If it's, it's a Ponzi scheme. If it's just, well, some new people have to buy some stuff for it to keep going. That said, last year, I've put very little new money into So Rare, just because, I'm always watching the marketplace and I buy cards when they're cheap and I sell them in the run up to the season. This year, obviously, I don't know if there's going to be a run up, but I will say last year, the response to the changes that they introduced, which was in-season competitions and classic competitions, was, oh my God, they nerfed classic. This is the worst thing ever. They ruined our game. And I think that is a really good example of So Rare, doing a good job of balancing. I think we were all pretty happy with the way the last MLB season went, with the introduction of chases and the balance of rewards in the competitions. Obviously, more is going to be better always, but they did a better job in MLB than they had in the season before in NBA, where NBA, like, Rare was like terrible. Like, it was barely worth playing. And I think most of us that played in Rare for MLB last season did fine and enjoyed it. So like you said, my overall take on this right now is it's going to depend on what they do. We really don't know right now. I do like the fact that they have these levers that they're going to be able to kind of push and pull. And again, we'll get into this. I'm not sure how long you're going to be able to stay on, Bob, but I can probably get into the ceiling and the vault stuff afterwards, unless you have thoughts on that. But
No. Honestly, I know nothing about the scene in the vaults. This is all
yeah,
relatively new. This is just, first reactions. I'm, me, I don't typically sell my stuff anyway. So I don't really care much about what the value of the cards are.
right.
So I want to play the game. I was hoping that, as of last year, that we would be able to use the classic cards to play regular competition and win in season cards and just let it keep feeding on itself, and so be it. We'll figure out if it's actually worth it, but it has to be worth it. If I'm going to put more money in it, absolutely has to be worth it. And this is why I said at the start, we'll see what it actually looks like. We'll see what they give us. We'll see how it functions. Like, it's all vague at the moment right now. So yeah. And Aaron, I may be an idiot.
I think he's talking about me, but Aaron is my number one fan. But no, so, Himmers, I've never been good at saying this name. Heimer. I was always Heimer in my head, and I think that's wrong. But he's saying he's out, which is too bad. But no, I had been saying this since, since I we first kind of heard about what this might look like is that I think this is set up exactly for my type of gallery, a huge gallery. Some would say excessively, you know, but again, we got to talk a little bit more about um, the other mechanics that are going to be introduced here. But um, to the extent having a big gallery is going to allow for people to uh, uh, seal some cards away, and if that's something that you can use to earn energy, or something where again we need to kind of see how the energy mechanic works. But if it's something where you have one giant pool of energy, um, you know, uh, and you can apply it to a card, that's one thing. If it's something where it kind of applies to each card individually, but something that I was talking to Bob before about was like, well, I mean, if I have a dozen O'Neill Cruzes, and the cooldown period or the time it's going to take for me to build up energy for each one is however long, if I can play one week and then the next one the next week, and then in 12 weeks, I've got the initial one ready to play again. I do think, I think that's what they should be encouraging, to the extent they want us to buy and hold as many cards as possible. I mean, that's good for their business. And to some extent it's good for the game. I mean, obviously no one should be um uh I just lost my train of thought. I apologize. But
Yeah. I mean, Clamp, going back on just a couple of things, I knew you're on a good little rant there a little bit. But, when it comes to the daily game, we've been doing daily rivals with the football side of things, and NBA has their daily. And I also have a really big gallery on the basketball side. And I can tell you that play it, like we're almost to the All-Star break here in the basketball side. And I've just basically stopped setting my daily. When the juice isn't worth the squeeze, you stop getting that attention. And I'm really curious to see how they get me to keep coming back. I mean, if it's just Bob, keep putting in your one daily team to build up some energy, and maybe you can use your Shohei Otani. To me, that's not worth it, right? Like, okay, so like, is it Bob? Put your 100 daily teams in. That's also a lot of work. So, like, where is the balance? How is this going to work? Because, like I said, I'm winning essence on the NBA side playing the daily game, but I'm still not putting in the dailies every single time. Like, I'm getting updates on my phone saying, "Hey, this guy's out of the lineup," and I'm like, "Well, I don't care." Like, and so at some point there is attrition with all users of enough is enough. This is getting boring. The value isn't there anymore. So it's a big question of where the value is going to lie with how you actually come across and attack the game. And like I said at the start, if they're doubling or tripling the amount of money I can win for winning champion, I might put more money in. Like, I understand that, because it's a value proposition. I did it last year. I put a bunch of money in at the start and I re-X'd my money coming out at the end. Like, that worked for me. And that's notwithstanding the fact that I still have all the cards. So that was great, right? That was my revenue generation point. The question becomes, what am I going to do? Like, and what is the game going to do? And I can't tell you that right now, but I can tell you that dailies get boring relatively quick. Yeah. People stop doing them. They lose value. They lose retention. And if you're relying on that to get people to be able to use their classic cards and in-season stuff, I think that's kind of a swing and a miss, but I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, no. So two things with that. One, it's from what I've seen, I think they want daily to be available so that when new players start playing, you can start playing on a Tuesday, right? So if you buy a card, you don't have to wait until the start of the game week on Friday to be able to play your card. So I think they want to have that element there. I do think it is one, it's a little bit of bonus utility, right? So if you do have too many cards, it's a place you can use them, which is something that we are always asking for, is more utility. For me, for NBA, and I've always said this, like I've always been a far bigger NBA fan than an MLB fan in terms of just fandom. Like I grew up going to Bucks games, uh, far more than Brewers games, but the NBA game is not as fun for me. And so I often forget to set lineups for NBA. And so I'm often on a Tuesday, you know, uh, I didn't even play a weekly lineup. So it's something where I can at least play around with my cards. So there's that. There's that aspect of it. But again, I think their goal is for the bi-weekly game to be the core game still, that the daily is just something extra. It's something there for new players. But
Yeah, but I want to go on something you just said there. So
yeah,
you're talking about the new player coming in, wanting to buy a card and play it right away. So TJ Doc made a good point. Rivals, which is essentially their everyday kind of game in football, has already been scrapped. That's not. It's already been proven to not be a tool for user growth and retention.
yeah.
So it's gone,
But
right? And
but I
so
do
I'm
I do
curious.
think in part that's because it was an entirely different game, right?
Yeah, but again, it's again you have a lot of the same users. So I don't know. Like I think that one of the things that servers always struggled with is not only user like getting users in, like bringing in the brand new users, but also getting them to stay, right? And so it's kind of a balance, and you have to set up the game in such a way that you attract new users, you get them to stay, but you also don't get rid of the users that are dumping thousands of dollars into your game every right. And like you have to try to figure that out, and that's why a lot of the feedback kind of comes through on all levels of the game because I'm just talking about limited, right? So like my exposure isn't nearly as big as somebody else's that's playing it rare or super rare or unique, God forbid, right? So I can go back in and comfortably do this. I just don't know that I would do it in the same way if the values are not there. And because also what this also does is, as Aaron called out, it essentially has nuked the value of classic cards in a lot of cases too with what has just been announced. Now we may see how the gameplay comes out and classic cards have a little bit more value, but we don't know yet. It's all speculation. And that's the hard part of all of this, right? They make an announcement. It's a purposely vague announcement, which allows them to make some adjustments here and there as we go through and we figure it out. But all I know is that, my Shohei Otani was worth more yesterday than it was today, my class, right? So it does matter if you're trying to sell. Now, you don't want to, it doesn't matter because I don't sell. I'm just like, yeah, what are you going to do? So we'll see. You know what? Uh, I don't know. You got to keep everybody happy somehow, some way. You need whales to put money into the ecosystem. And if my opinion doesn't really matter much, honestly, when it comes down to it, if the whales aren't going to be buying new seasons every single year, you have a larger issue on your hands.
Yeah. So one thing, Hagel noted, NBA Daily, I think, is better than Rivals. I think that's right.
It
And
is
like I said, like
100% is. It's
like
still
I
boring though, and you just stop
yeah,
playing after a while.
but I feel like when we talked, it was probably December or so. You were saying like you've really enjoyed like getting the essence and being able to craft cards, and you're able to craft a card every week or two or something like that. And that I think it's at something that both for essence and for energy is kind of the core of I think how this actually plays out is they need to get it right. Like, I know someone in the Discord had said, well, hey, I'm not going to save my good cards to play in a daily game if all you can win is essence. But essence is essentially a fraction of a card, and they get to control what that fraction is. And so if it's if it costs 500 500 essence to craft a star card, and you get 450 for winning the daily competition, or even 500, like for sure you would be playing your better cards in there because it's essentially all or most of a star card. Now we don't want them to even over kind of flood the market with essence as opposed to cards. Again, they need to keep a cap on that stuff.
Yeah,
But
but Kev, like when it comes to essence, it was exciting at the start. like all things are exciting at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Well,
Like
in soccer, it
remember the
was
first remember the
over.
but
They did too good of a job with it, right? Like,
no,
well,
they
and
no,
in part,
they
it was more people were doing the lower level ones than they
yes.
expected, and so that
Yeah,
made the numbers wrong, and they had to tweak it.
right. But all of these things lose their effect really quick.
Oh
So
yeah,
think of
but
the first
a
date.
card's a
Think of the
card.
first date you went on with your partner, your now life partner, like most gorgeous person in the world, and like it's just like, oh, I'm smitten. But then after time, your partner becomes your best friend, and things look different, and things evolve, and like things are different as you go through. It's no longer exciting to rip an asset. Yeah, like it actually is just like, okay, like what disappointment is around the corner next? And I actually think that's like it's to rely on something like Essence is a bad business plan, just in general.
Oh
It
yeah,
makes
no,
people
I
stop
don't.
wanting to play. But I do think there is one thing I want to call out that I think that I actually like what Aaron said um, when he was talking about like whales. Like he's playing the game, you have the chance to win, and I think that that's great. We need more people like Aaron to play the game with the chance to win. Unfortunately, the game does function on an economy and you have to make money, and more of the money comes from those big purchases. And when you actually look at some of the numbers that come through, it's still rare. Almost a large chunk of the actual revenue and money that they make come from the larger purchase. That's just the reality of the situation, unfortunately, because I love playing the game at limited. I had more fun last year playing at limited than I did in the previous 2 years playing at super rare and unique. But you still need those guys in the system. So while we may not be talking about them in this instance, they still need to be there. They still have to be willing to put the money in. So yeah, going back to what I was saying though, like Essence, all of these things are good for short periods of time. And like that's the reality of the users that we have too. We like things for short periods of time. And somehow last year, they struck this nice balance within season and classic that made the game really fun. And I had more fun last year of playing So Rare at Limited in MLB than I have in any other version of So Rare in any other game of So Rare. And so it was really interesting to see and read on these changes. Like I'm willing to be patient to see what happens.
And yeah, I've been joking about the lore of Sora FP, but for those of you that don't know Bob, and I'm guessing everyone does, but he played soccer. He came over to MLB. He was playing uh uh super rare and and unique, I think too, right? You had,
Yep.
yeah, I feel like there was a rowdy unique in there, right?
Oh yeah, I
uh,
won a few UKILLs. So
yeah.
yep.
But you know Bob got so frustrated with so rare MLB, and I want to be clear right now. The majority of what I'm talking about right now is limited and rare. That's where most of the players are, and the way that rewards and prizes and the way that just the general treatment of the managers goes is much different, I think, in super rare and unique. And I know there's folks here like Kika and Hagel, I think that play super rare, but it's to some degree a different game, and frankly, I mean, I would love to play super rare, but they do a terrible job with it, and I don't see any reason to do it.
Yeah.
So I haven't been. So I've sold off most of my super rares. I'll play a little bit this coming year, but that's all. But Bob quit MLB because he was so fed up with it. And when he got back in, it was just in limited, and it made it more fun again because he wasn't so pissed off at what a terrible job they were doing, and all of that. And so, um, you know, so
Yeah.
I think, I think what So Rare is doing in terms of whales, I don't know. I mean, I don't think they care, to be honest. But I think, and I know someone was just Heimer was talking about they don't effectively market the product from what I've seen, and we're all kind of guessing at what's going on behind the scenes, but it seems like they want to figure out what the fuck their game is before they branch out, and it is something where you need to be careful with it in terms of I think in large part, I think a lot of the negativity around soccer has to do with the fact that it blew up so big and people got so excited, that that prices got so high and then they fell so dramatically that there's just no one that was there then is ever going to be happy again, because it's not going to be that again. And it's going to be
That,
impossible.
that's correct. That's correct. I mean, it's and part of the issue that we tend to run into is that when you constantly have moving goalposts, like it makes it a little bit more difficult, right? And so I'm okay with that because I understand that with all things, MLB changes their rules every single year. So does basketball, so does football, soccer. Like we get it. We have to make adjustments. And that's what we do. And part of what I'm trying to figure out, and I think what a lot of people in our Discord and in chat are trying to figure out is how do they approach this season? Right. And I think that we need more information before we can actually put together a plan. Because as you know, Clamp, I'm all about what is the plan? Like, is it worth it? And it'll come down to, for me, what the actual value in the rewards are that we can actually get for in season. Like, that's really what it comes down to at the end, because I know that things are nerfed. And like, for me, is it worth me putting in another $1,000 this year of in season cards, building up the right collections, which is essentially just buying all Dodgers because they have everybody, and just moving forward with that and just putting it out there every single week for in season, just letting it run. Right? Like, is that
Yeah.
the actual play? And then if they allow me to do multiple daily lineups to build up essence and actually use my classic cards, is that going to be a good way to go about them? Like, that's really what we try to figure out. And I don't know yet. I need more information when it comes right down to it. And I'm relatively certain that I'm not going to get any of that information. And I'm going to have to wait. And waiting is not how I like to play this game, because my approach in this is you need to maximize, if you're going to do it, you need to maximize your collections and you need to have the cards before the season starts to get everything as high up as humanly possible and win early and often. Yeah, I don't care
Yeah.
about Dodgers pitching, Robbie. Like, Dodgers pitching can do whatever they want to do. You get a good pitcher and you build them up.
Nice. Um, yeah. And so,
Yeah,
and
Aaron,
while
exactly.
Aaron and I disagree about a lot of things, no, I mean, I don't want to be like So Rare's biggest cheerleader, but I mean, they're in a tough spot with this stuff where it's, if they, if they're like, all right, every detail has been figured out, they're for sure gonna get shit wrong. And so like, if then they need to go back on it or just continue with whatever they got wrong. So it's hard to figure out exactly how they should do that. But I mean, I do think they're trying. I do think they're getting better very slowly at the communication stuff. I mean, 2 years ago, I don't think we would have even gotten this. I think it would have just been an announcement, and it would have been, not even it wouldn't have even necessarily suggested that they have an understanding of what the game is and how people play it. And I know, it feels, I think for a lot of folks, that they're like, I mean, like Robbie said, like they're taking, like this was a fun game and they're moving it away from that. And the same thing that you're saying, Bob, and that, it's not the part of the game that's fun for you is all the gamification stuff. But I do think that, okay, I guess I want to share what I think their vision is. And I think I think they want to encourage people to have large galleries. I think they want to encourage people to do collections. I think, in a perfect world, if like you're talking about spending $1,000 on cards, like whatever your budget is, whether it's, I can spend $100 a season. I do think they want people to buy some amount of new cards every year, whether that's $100 or $500 or $5,000 for, the folks that are playing super rare and unique. But I think I think in a perfect world, that's a fraction of your gallery, not taking the Bob approach of, and it's not necessarily Bob's approach, but it's, one of the options that we talked about with Bob of just sell all your cards and buy new cards next season. But like 10% of kind of your gallery you're putting back in. And I will say, for in terms of my spend and if I'm a whale or not, certainly I've put a lot of money into it, but I haven't put much money into it at all for the past like 2 years, because in part because I have so many cards. And so they don't want people buying 15 Royce Lewis cards. But
So
like, I mean, I end up buying cards when they're cheap and they're just sitting there on the market and they're going to be worth more probably at some point,
yeah,
and then I sell them. So
I
like,
mean,
it is what it is. And so, last season I bought a bunch of in-season cards, but it was because I'd sold like, I don't know, thousands of dollars worth of classic cards, throughout the off season and in the lead up. And I think despite kind of the sentiment, I think to some degree it's an overreaction, and people are going to, again, we need the details, so we don't
yeah.
know what it's going to look like, but assuming they don't entirely fuck it up, I think
Well,
that
what happens
people
when you
will,
assume stuff can't clamp? I mean, and honestly, like we could talk about our galleries like the entire night and like what we think is going to happen. I'm really curious. So, hey, Ego putting that high vault and player loyalty stuff,
yeah.
and I want to talk more about that because I don't understand like what he's talking about. If that's something that's actually so rare, so like, can we talk more about these things like the vault and the ceilings and stuff like that? Because I have no idea what any of this means.
Yeah. So I mean, to some degree, this is like staking, right? So it's, you agree to lock up your card for however long, and so that takes it off. The mark, you can't play it, you can't sell it while it's in the vault, and then you get some sort of bonus for it. Whether that's
Bonus meaning what? So like, if I lock up my
well, so
soda,
so the
like,
reward multiples would be,
yeah.
so if it's $1,000 for winning, pro, if you've got a 1.5 multiplier, you get $1,500.
So basically, I'm gambling that if I lock up my Soto and a whole bunch of other guys, that I can win more money if they actually win. Like, is
I
that
don't
what
know
I'm
that you would
basically?
lock up your Soto. I think you'd lock up your garbage cards personally. But
But like, but
again, I
how would
mean,
that happen? Like, I don't. Again, this is like so part of the thing here that I don't understand. Reward multiples of up to 1.5%. Like, I'm happy to win more money, right? But I
yeah,
need to understand like what that means. Like, does that mean that I can lock up my crap cards and still win more? Because that's like, duh. I'm going to lock up all of my open A's and I'm just going to pitch Mason Miller once and he's going to get
yeah,
a whole bunch of saves and we're going to win more money. Like, okay. Like half of the cards, like 90% of the cards that I owned last year, and I owned a lot, I didn't use, right?
yeah,
Like, do I just leave them in a vault and I win more for using my good guys? Like, I don't understand at all. So, I mean, I need some help here
yeah.
if we can get
So
into it.
yeah, so again, this is kind of I think this is part of the tool set that they'll have to encourage collections, and part of, controlling the market. So the more they incentivize us to lock cards up, it reduces the supply, which is good for the market. But it's Aaron's not going to like this one, but in terms of not wanting people buying 15 Royce Lewis's, um, they actually are encouraging that. I think that's what the player affinity, kind of the player loyalty thing is. The more of a player you have, the more of a boost you get for that.
Wait,
Um,
like, so when you say a boost, you mean a reward boost
I,
or an
I'm not
in-game
I'm not
boost?
entirely certain kind of what the plan is for that, and I can take a look at see exactly what details they gave. Again, I think this is something
No,
where
because I mean,
we're not gonna level up your vault and player loyalty. You unlock perks starting with reward multipliers. So, I mean, it looks like it's just, at least as a starting point, um, reward multiplier. So if what the normal kind of, excuse me, the normal reward is 10 essence, you get 15. If it's, a $5 credit, you get 750. So that's what they're saying with that. It's, again, the specifics of it are gonna change, like for sure they're gonna change. But uh it's, again, in part, when I'm looking at this stuff, it's, what are the tools that they're implementing, and are they, going to be something that they can, good for the game. So, you know and again, I have a somewhat different take than you, and I think the kind of gamification is something that is good overall, to the extent it helps the game grow, that there's different ways you can play, that it's becomes more attractive to more people, that it's, and this is the kind of uncomfortable part, that it's a slightly addictive, I mean, it's, they want people on the site every day, making it a, a part of their leisure routine, and that's just where you spend your leisure money. So, you know, there's that. So I mean, I don't, this is something that's going to change for sure. They're not, I mean, I don't expect them to get this right exactly,
Mhm.
but I do, I think we do want to see them encouraging, large, everyone has always said, we want these to be collectibles. We want people to, these to have collectible value. And so this is a way of encouraging that, of encouraging
Well,
you to build out a gallery. Everything that
but
they're
it's
doing with that sort of thing is,
but that's not what collectible value means, though.
yeah, well,
Collectible value means
and
that like I'm buying my Mickey Mantle and I'm collecting it, and
yeah,
it's going to get better with years because of the time. Because that's what a collectible is. A collectible is not Bob, buy all of the Oakland A's so that you can boost your Mason Miller to 5%, which is actually a gaming strategy that I put into play last year to great effect. Right?
yeah.
Like that's not collectible. And that's not how you build collectible basis
Well,
to make your game a
and to be
collectible game.
clear, that's not
Okay.
how I feel. I mean, I think my view is that this stuff has collectible value if we care about it.
Well, yeah,
it's
of
only
course.
going to have collectible value if like it's something that we look back on with nostalgia, if it's, if it's something that we care about. So, you know, and I know, folks have talked about this, but like with Magic the Gathering, like even if you can't play, a Black Lotus or a Mox or whatever in most or almost all competitions, people still pay an insane amount of money for them because they're, these old school classic cards that have meaning for people. And so if Rare MLB is going to be around in 10 years, it'll have collectible value because we're still playing and still care. But I think, again, I think it's a little bit of a tool, to encourage the the way to play or the type of playing that they want to see, and hopefully that takes root, and people kind of build on that. But um, the I think the most important thing for me, I think, with this is going to be how much friction there is with it, and how like if you need to be able to play the way you want to play. And just like Robbie said, where it's like, I just want to play fantasy baseball and compete. And like,
Mhm.
if they get this right, you're going to be able to. And like, if you want to do the other stuff, you can. If you want to get extra boosts, and you're, like you're on one hand saying like, I don't like the gamification, but on the other hand saying like, I like the fact that I can use strategy, and like I can,
Yeah,
I
but
could do a
strategy is
collection, and I could do
strategy.
this
Strategy
collection
is
thing,
different than
this
gamification,
collection
Kevin.
thing that's
Like
not a core part of the game to get an extra boost, and then I can beat other managers,
no, but
right?
again, but strategy is different than gamification. Like in all games, there is strategy thing, right? And this is still a game. It's a fantasy baseball game first, and it's what it. I think what Robbie is saying is that it's slipping away from being a fantasy baseball game, just a game, right? And I'm curious to see how it goes. Like I said, like we're so early in this. Like this is the first day, and this is like the overreaction podcast that Laird does all the time with
Right.
soccer when new stuff comes out. I get it. Like we get it too. We're gonna have fun with it, and it's good to guess. And I'm curious to see how it looks because I want to love it. I want to see how it goes, and hopefully I'm surprised. I mean, I want to see that it has value. I want to see that I can use my classic cards. I want to see how I can figure out how to take advantage of this because if someone is going to take advantage of this, it's going to be me. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to put it in place and then I'm going to win. And then they're going to switch it up again next year. So that's kind of like the MO. We'll see what happens. I want to. The game was awesome last year. I loved it last year. I had a great time. It didn't hurt that I was winning, but it helped us at Sober FP too, right? It got people drawn in. The game itself, the fantasy baseball game, and so I'm curious how we will handle the energy mixes and matches and all that kind of stuff too, because it is different. And I'm seeing, and like what I always get a little concerned about is that baseball, it is by far the best so rare game available. Like it's not even close. The actual game itself, and this is the best fantasy baseball game I've ever played. Right, and we are the testing grounds. It feels like for everything else. And so I'm curious to see how this goes.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we've got probably 9 minutes before we got to wrap up. I know Hunter and Taylor are doing a stream after this. And Hunter and I have been meaning to talk for a while, and we don't want to step on each other's toes and all of that. So please go watch Hunter and Taylor in a few minutes. But yeah, if there's, I guess, for me, the biggest thing again is going to be, getting these details right. I think, I mean, I think it's a fine line between ruining the game or not. I do think that their goal is to have the core game be the core game. I think they do at least recognize, and I know Everett is left, and so he's not there anymore. I don't know for better or worse, what that's going to mean. But I do think they understand that this is by far the best core game that they have. It's better than NBA and it's better than soccer, I think, regardless of how you feel about those sports generally.
Mhm.
But I think the goal is that if you want to care about this stuff, you can. And for new users, to the extent this is getting overcomplicated, you don't have to do any of that stuff. You don't need to do ceiling and vaulting because you're not, unless you're buying off the secondary market. Like if you just come in, you buy the auctions, like you're not even going to be dealing with classic cards. And so you're not dealing with that part of it. The other thing is, there's this kind of toss up of XP matters or not. And one of the cooler things about this game is that 6 different unique lineups can be on the be in the top 10. You don't need to have the best players. It's not something where you need whatever stud player that you might need in soccer, where you need Jokic or Luka or whatever to be able to compete every week. It just doesn't, this game doesn't work that way, which is, I think, really cool. And so having those extra boosts help. And it's something that, again, you can do if you want to, and if you're willing to put that time in, whether it's for collecting or whether it's for whatever, you can do that. But I mean, for sure you can win and you can podium without having any bonuses. Like that's just a fact. Like you're, the way that the scoring works and the way that you see different, I mean, for sure there are weeks where you need to have the Dodgers playing at Colorado because those guys are going to put up the huge numbers or whatever. If it's a 4-game a week, where Vlad goes off or something like that, you need to have them for sure. But um that's there's at least as many weeks where it's going to be Ryan McMahon and Ryan Mountcastle and a bunch of other Ryans that you can play to victory, and like no one else is going to have that lineup. We've talked about the guy that only runs Orioles stack, like entire Orioles stacks except for one player, and they podium because that was the week, and that's
Yeah, but
they could have done that without any bonuses.
let's be honest here though. The reason that the best players are the best players, we use them more often, is because they are the most consistently best players. Period. And that's great that Ryan McMahon goes nuts, or Ryan Mountcastle or Zach McKinstry, or Luis Heel throws a no hitter, or
Yeah,
Diego Herman throws a no hitter. Like
yeah.
that's great, right? But you still have to put them together with the other guys, and more often than not, we rarely see those lineups, those guys that are in there. They're in there because people don't have anybody else to use them. And that's the God's honest truth of how this game works.
That's not how I play at all.
No, it's not how you play, but you're weird, Kev.
I
And
know, but I've also been pretty successful,
you
despite
you
what
you
my
have you have,
not
but
fans think
again, it's
about the way that I play the game. And hopefully we're going to be able to put together
yeah.
stats on actually how people have performed, pulling that stuff off the API. But like, it's um, no, like, I mean, that's the only way I play is playing the matchups, and it's having the
Oh,
Rockies or
the matchups are right. I mean, I don't get
yeah,
me wrong. Like I play the matchups too. I have
yeah, but you're
when
playing the
I play the
matchups with
matchups,
all of the best players, which is
but
fine. But like, and
right,
and, and I
because
think this is the
statistically,
key difference is
yeah,
that um and between other sports and all that, like Luca can put up 100 or 90 or whatever,
yeah,
and I don't know, Chris Middleton is never going to do that. But like Ryan Mountcastle will put up like 100-point game week, like he has. Like, and
Yep.
it's not just Bobby Witt, and it's not just Otani. It's those other guys can on the right week, and we can figure out, you know, when Mountcastle is going to do that, when it's a bunch of garbage lefties from the A's, even with Mount Baltimore there, like he put up a 70 or an 80 or whatever. And so, you can play it that way. And I think this is the point I was trying to make, was that, like Otani, like, I don't know, 50% of all game weeks is going to be a great play. And Ryan Mountcastle, 10% of all game weeks is going to be a great play. But if I can buy Ryan Mountcastle, Ryan McMahon, and Willie Adames, and guys like that, the third tier kind of guys, I can get 10%, 10%, 10% from all of them, and for 10% of the price, like combined 10% of the price of Otani. And so it's just a different way to play. But it takes a lot of, kind of digging in and like seeing like where someone is going to have those matchups or whatever. But, it's, again, a different way to play. We've both been successful playing a different way. And I think that's what's cool about this. But all right. Any last thoughts, Bob, before we wrap this up?
No, I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah.
I am going to be patient and, like I said, see what it actually looks like, how it's going to work, and then I'm going to put together a plan. I think that's what I'm going to do, and that'll be a different conversation when we come down to it. And we'll test it out, and we'll see what happens. And I like my collection scores, and that was just part of what was going on, and it didn't make the cards collectible. But I will say I don't want to get rid of my Shohei Ohtani postseason card that I won. I'm hoping that they'll give us a kind of carrot and allow the postseason cards that we won last year to be treated as in cards, which would be incredible because they're completely different than the cards last year. I think that would be a big tip of the cap for the Silver community. That would actually drive a little market activity. So we'll see.
Nice. I love it. Thanks again, Bob. Thanks everyone for watching and commenting and all of that. Fingers crossed I'll be able to figure out how to turn this into a podcast before the weekend is out, and it won't just be on YouTube. But yeah, no, appreciate it. We'll be starting regular streams soon. Again, thanks everyone, and hope to see you soon.
Later all.